know, age. And so how do we get back into the loop when already we feel a disconnect with, you know, the younger generations to help, you know, do what we can?
I mean, I would just say common struggles. I mean, I think we're all fighting for equal rights. I mean, I wasn't here in the 60s or 70s, but I'm hoping that there was some kind of unity with our elders and our young people. I mean, that's a huge, I also noticed that there's a huge gap between like the LGBTQ elders and the young folks. I mean, there's hardly any programs, and if there are those programs, they're not facilitated right, or the youth don't feel comfortable. I mean, I'm not sure that they're doing the right kind of work, but I would love to see people like our elders and our youth united for a common struggle, our equal rights. Gay marriage, I don't really care what it is, but come together on something.
JR? You're at the one end of the spectrum, and this gentleman's at the other end. 22 and 60-something.
Well, like, I just don't like it'd be better if, like, more queer, like, adults were, like, volunteering at youth services so we can actually see that they still care and everything and stop, like, disagreeing with everything we say. Like, because that happens a lot.
I think there's a certain amount of training that there has to be done also. I mean, you have to have, if you're working with youth, you need to have a certain amount of patience. And if you're working with the elderly or our elders, you're going to need a certain kind of patience. You need to come to each other's common ground.
Yeah, and it's that humility of like, yeah, admitting I have no idea where you are. Exactly. And you have no idea where I am or where I've been. And it's coming to the table and putting that out there. And I think by you saying that, you're doing that. And you're saying, I really have no idea what's going on with these youth, you know?
And this is also an opportunity for common struggle. I mean, in coming and trying to address the needs of the community represented here. And that's a place where you could definitely bridge the gap is working on trying to address all the issues that have been presented.
Great. Sir?
My name is Marshall, and I live near Church and Market. I want to talk about Mitcho because I knew and worked with him. I think it would be much easier to double the money that went into all these programs than it is to find a way to clone Mitcho.
Well, yes.
Because what he did, and he's just one piece of it, okay?
Yeah.
He's not the whole thing.
No.
What he did was he created a group that found a sense of community in a place and knew where to go. He created a sense of connection for this group of youth. Now, when they moved to the center, it was hard on the center.
Yeah.
It was really hard, but it was worth it, okay? And then after 10 years, Mitcho retired. So I want to raise the question of burnout and succession planning, okay? Yeah. Because if we don't deal with that, all the money that we could throw at the problem is not going to work.
I mean, I think that's a huge thing, and I know that's something we work really huge. We work a lot with amongst our staff is burnout prevention and having that support and, you know, acknowledging vicarious trauma. And especially when you're a provider and you come from that population, you are constantly re-traumatized by things the youth are going through because you have been there before. And so I think there needs to be an outlet for, you know, staff or paraeducators to talk about that and be honest about that. And if, you know, you're using drugs to get support around that and not have to hide it because now there's a drug-free workplace. And I think there's a lot of issues that come up. And I think burnout and succession planning is a huge thing. I mean, I think we've seen countless programs in San Francisco fold when the founder or director of that program left.
Plus, Mitcho was a one-man band.
Right. And I think that creating working groups and advisory boards for programs is really important because it should be up to that advisory board to acknowledge if a director or something is getting burnout and to start talking about, you know, like I know my board and I talk about all the time the hit by a bus thing. Like, what if I get hit by a bus? What will happen to homeless youth lines? And what is the plan? And it could vary.
Watch out for Muni.
Watch out for Muni. I mean, especially the Judah, killing people all the time.
What do you think? The whole burnout issue.
Oh yeah, I think it's good. Yeah, we definitely
have it.
Have it.
So what do we do to protect you guys that are right here now.
I mean, I think a great thing would be if there's like volunteer psychologists and stuff to do groups. I mean, I'm serious. Like our staff have an on-site therapy group to talk about how hard this job is.
For the staff.
For the staff.
Yes.
Just for the staff.
Yes.
And you know, the only reason we have that is because that's donated to us.
From somebody outside the system.
Exactly.
Really important.
Yeah.
What's been important to me too is like, I get a lot of emails on complaints about, the homeless in the Castro, and it's like, this person or that person, and, I mean, just inundation, and that can just, it's stressful just reading the emails. Yeah. And, every once in a while, somebody will pop up and say, hey, you know what, I've seen less homeless here, great job, and, that's just, it fuels my energy. And so, I pass that on to my staff too. I mean, just one email that, thanking you or acknowledging, the difficulty in what you're dealing with like every day even helps, so.
Okay.
So I'm 24 years old, technically a youth and
Transitioning out.
Transitioning. It's a little freaky. I'm formerly homeless, however you want to define it. I was very transitional for a while. I mean, I've been working at the center for a year, and burnout is a serious issue. I have a huge passion for this kind of work, but I hardly can afford my own housing. I mean, and not to mention I have to go home and worry and think about the people that I can't help every night because there aren't the services, and that's a huge toll on me. And like the people that are doing the work that I'm doing, and the people that are working on the ground and trying to refer people, just to have people on the other end of the line say, no, I'm sorry, we can't help you. I mean, we need support. Not only that, like you said, we need to, if we're going to start a program, we need to train the youth to run the program. The youth need to be running the programs.
Because if we leave it up to them, it's not going to die because that passion is there.
Another question, gentlemen?
My name is Isaac Lindenauer, and I'm a resident and a merchant of the Castro. I wasn't aware of the center here being used for youth services at one point with this fellow that you're all praising so. But it seems to me that if you're concerned with what's happening here and you've got the facility that's still here, what do you need to do in order to find somebody to replace this fellow, or somebody like this fellow who wants to volunteer services to come in and act as a primary mentor so that the kids have a place to come to, and then you can begin from the ground to develop something here again?
So Tommy wanted to fill the question.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, one of the reasons that I started this whole thing and this discussion in this forum tonight and got this group together was so that we could work on things like that. And I think if there's a consensus in the community around the idea of restoring that service, I would love to see that happen, and that's what the work group can work on. So everybody who signed up for the work group, and if there's anybody else who wants to sign up for the work group, that's one of the things we're going to talk about, is can we restore that EVRC program and even make it bigger and better and have more services and, just make it work better than it did before. Because it worked well before, but I think we could do even better.
Well, because just as a follow-up, having a place to come into from the outside may not be a place where you can sleep. On some symbolic level, it's welcoming arms around you, and it's home.
Right.
Another thing, is there anything with Most Holy Redeemer? Does Most Holy Redeemer work with the kids in the neighborhood in any way? It's hard to imagine that the church, which opens its arms to so many people, hasn't addressed this issue. And third, I never heard of mobile crisis. Being a resident and a merchant here, I'm calling all the time, trying to help the people I see on the street. I think that should be promoted more, whether it's through the BAR or through organizations. I think people who are out on, who live in the neighborhood need to know that there's an alternative to calling the police.
Yes. And let me just answer your thing about, well, I don't know much about Holy Redeemer. I mean, I was involved 12 years ago with helping to set up a bunch of services for homeless queer youth in the Castro. We set up a shower project, a food program, which is still running, and 3 winter shelters within the Castro. And the only religious group that really came to our aid was MCC Church, which Lynn is a part of. In fact, Lynn's been a part of the food program. MCC Church was amazing, and they even provided their facility on 150 Eureka for the food program. We also had the shelter there for a while. So in terms of religious groups, I think MCC's really been incredibly supportive. They still are. The minister was here earlier. The woman sitting back there, Leah, was here tonight, and she's very interested in being part of the work group. So I think in terms of religious groups, there's been a lot of support. If you have a connection with Holy Redeemer,